Welcome to the show of shows. Okay, maybe not the show of shows, but something like it. The Single Dad's Guide to Life is expanding into the podcast business, or vlogcast business, I suppose, as you actually see my face, or maybe both of those things. Either way, we'll be bringing more video and audio content directly to you. As the director of ceremonies here at the Guide, or maybe just a blogger, because it's kind of what I am, I've been looking to branch out into new content, and I know I talked about getting into YouTube. This is exactly what this is. I'm going to get into new content platforms which expand on what we already do here at the Guide, and we're going to do all sorts of things here. But at the Guide, we write. And write. And write some more, because I love writing. We will be producing more each month, hopefully with at least one blog per week to keep up with the Joneses. Or the Try Guys. But definitely not those other vloggers, which shall remain nameless. I don't think boring you with that would be worth our time and effort. Or your eardrums, for that matter. As exciting as my life can look, there's a ton of boring parts to it. You don't want to see me sitting by my desk all day practicing new curse words I can make up about my computer. Or see all the hilarious costumes I can put on my dog, because, I do some pretty awesome costumes, just to let you know. Well, maybe you do, but more on that later. Either way, we are excited to bring you more content directly to you, which means subscribe here and on our YouTube channel, because you need to. For our first vlogcast, we want to get into all things Disney Plus. It's just a month into the streaming service, or almost a month. The 12th will be a month. And we kind of want to go over the positives and the negatives, the hits and the misses, and what we can look forward to on Disney Plus in the future. I also want to take on some of the new shows like The Mandalorian and High School the Musical, the series. What we think has potential and what we think will not be standing the test of time. So welcome to the Single Dad's Guide to Life's weekly vlog, The Dad's Disney Plus Extra. Okay, first up, binge watching versus weekly engagement. Okay, so essentially, we want to take on the nature of binge watching and what that has to deal with, because we've gotten addicted as the streaming services to having all of our content on demand right now, darn it. And so we want it all. And a lot of people, especially with Netflix, and I remember when they started with their streaming service, it was a secondary thing to their DVDs. When we started on the streaming service, immediately binge watching became the thing. I watched all of the Dollhouse within, a couple of days. And then I was going through Leverage and all sorts of other TV shows. And I just found myself wanting to watch one after the next, after the next, after the next. Now, I know that they'd already had DVDs, and some people had taken to buying DVDs rather than going to actually using, actually watching the television shows when they come out. They just wait for the season to be over, and then they'd buy the DVD and they'd watch it all right before the next season started. And that became kind of the norm, especially after Netflix. But then we've just had some recent shows, like Game of Thrones, obviously, where it became weekly television appointment. I mean, you really wanted to be there. You did not want to wait to find out, like 3 weeks later, from John in accounting about what happened with Jon Snow after season 5 of Game of Thrones. You had to be there for Game of Thrones season 6, episode 1, even though John didn't come back then. And you were there season 6, episode 2 when he did. So the thing is you definitely, especially with Game of Thrones, it turned us back into that whole we have to watch something week after week. The issue is that, okay, Disney is a streaming service, so they're actually bringing streaming service to you right away, which, like Netflix, streaming service, you think of getting something, you want it all, and then you tend to binge watch it, whether it's Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, whatever it is. Seasons come out, you want to binge watch it all at once. Now, Hulu's a little different because they've got a lot of network programming in the past, although we'll see what happens as Disney has bought them up. But for right now, you're actually having to deal with Disney Plus as they've decided to go with the anti-binge watch mode. Now, from a marketing perspective, obviously that comes with a lot of good things. I mean, you make sure that people end up coming back week after week. You want them to see your stuff, and you want them to pay because, Anyway, so if you have something like The Mandalorian, even if it's only 10 episodes, you're talking about 10 weeks. 10 weeks of individual episodes. All of a sudden, by the time you get to the end, you've gone through 2-3 months of payments. Now, obviously, they have their cost less than Netflix. Right now, they're only sitting at a price point of $6.99, which is ridiculous, as opposed to Netflix, which is like $15.99. But right now, they have moved to a weekly service with a weekly, every episode comes out each week. So for all the original programming, except for the movies like Lady and the Tramp and Noelle, which I'll get to later, they have everything comes out week by week. So you're kind of stuck with having to pay for 3 months worth of service, which, if all is said and done, then you're paying $21, which is more than that 1 month of Netflix. Now, of course, see, that's the risky thing about Netflix. If it's a month-to-month service, you can't, if there's a particular show that you want, you can pay for that 1 month, and then you can not pay for it for the next month. And then you can pay for it 2 months later when all of a sudden your shows come out, and then not pay for the next. With Disney, it kind of prevents you from doing that. So you're kind of stuck doing that. But the question is, with the weekly performances, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? Are you going to all of a sudden not pay? Or the other thing that could happen is people could wait till the whole season comes out, and then they'll pay for Disney Plus. Now, will Disney then yank the show as soon as it's out, all the way out? I mean, they probably can't. And they're probably not going to make you wait week after week like everyone else did. So there's a few questions I have about what... My first question is that, is something going to become weekly appointment viewing? Because ultimately, especially, I'm loving The Mandalorian, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I can watch that show week after week after week, but then what's going to happen? What makes something appointment viewing is everyone else has to be watching it out there on the same time, so that when you go to work, you start talking to your friends, everyone starts talking about The Mandalorian. And don't get me wrong, with the Rise of Skywalker coming out, I'm sure there's a lot of interest in The Mandalorian, and of course, Baby Yoda, Baby Yoda, Baby Yoda. Now, admittedly, I wasn't into Game of Thrones till season 3. Then I started watching Game of Thrones, so I wasn't part of that original set. It takes time to build something as appointment viewing. And the question is that will people get frustrated with the notion of it between now and then? Will they be able to maintain their viewership? And then will that then translate to other places? Will we be talking about this on blogs, on Twitter? Now, obviously, by having a memeable thing like Baby Yoda, it helped. But what's going to go on beyond that? The question is that, that's a one-trick pony. So what happens from here on out? Is Disney going to be able to keep our viewing? Are they going to be able to keep us going? Are they going to be stuck? And we're going to be like, no, this is not the way we want to go. We'll all wait until it all comes out. And then that may frustrate the way Disney had been modeling what it was going to do. Now, admittedly, Disney's living off a brand name right now. It got really popular. It was so popular that my PlayStation still has problems with loading everything. I can play it on my television just fine here. With Roku, I can play it with the Fire Stick just fine. But even my PlayStation hasn't fully caught up with all of the different issues that have been going on with Disney Plus. And part of that is just the sheer amount of people who are watching it. So obviously it's popular to a certain extent, but beyond that, what's going to happen? Are we going to end up with a regular appointment viewing or not? For right now, I think it's a kind of a wait and see. So I'm still appreciating it, and my daughter, who goes away every couple weeks, she comes back. We immediately have to catch up on everything, so then she watches everything, and we binge watch everything, or at least all the different shows that we watch on Disney Plus. And there are a few, which we'll get to right now. Next up, we're going to be covering The Mandalorian. Disney Plus Part 1, Show 1, The Mandalorian. So, to get into The Mandalorian, we really kind of have to go and talk about Star Wars, at least from my perspective, because I'm a movie guy. It's not that I'm not a television guy. Obviously, I love Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones had so many cinematic elements involved. I mean, that's what's made TV so amazing for so long. The question is what they were going to do with it. Now, I had tried to watch Star Wars Rebels and Droids and all the other different things that they've been putting out for the Star Wars universe for years, and I'm sorry, I just couldn't get into any of it. And I know the uber Star Wars people are going to die and want to kill me, and I may be buried next week. But I've just never been into those. My things have been the movies, and so everything kind of plays about the movies. And the question is the first thing, does it reach cinematic quality? I would say with easily an absolute yes. I was absolutely shocked that Disney has gone all out with this. Now, admittedly, they have Jon Favreau behind it, and Jon Favreau is the director behind Swingers, which I love, and you've got to go back and watch Swingers if you haven't watched it yet. I mean, that's classic Favreau. He's moved on to doing all sorts of different things. He's done Iron Man. Of course, I keep telling my daughter that he's happy in Iron Man, in the Iron Man movies, and in Spider-Man, and in the Avengers and stuff like that. So my daughter knows him that way, but of course he's directed the Jungle Book. He's directed a ton of things. And so bringing him on definitely brought someone who loved comic books, loved Star Wars, loved doing what it was. That was what made Peter Jackson so good at doing The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. When someone honestly loves the product that they're doing, then you can tell that on screen. You can tell something. You can tell when they love it for what it is and when they're trying to transform it. And right here, it's obvious that Jon Favreau loves Star Wars. You can just see it, the way he's doing it. And then cinematically, they have invested full out with CGI and everything else like that. So the special effects, everything looks great, everything looks seamless, and it's on television, which is crazy, once a week programming on television. And then, of course, they drop in us on The Mandalorian. Now, the question is what was The Mandalorian going to be when it first started? Was it going to be Boba Fett? Was it going to be a relative of Boba Fett? Is it Boba Fett just happened to be a Mandalorian, and this new character just happens to be another Mandalorian, who we don't really know their name other than being called The Mandalorian? So he's out there running around in the universe, and he's played by Pedro Pascal, which is the second thing that made me absolutely excited about this. I mean, aside from Star Wars and loving Star Wars, I was super excited because Pedro Pascal was one of my favorite characters in Game of Thrones. Now, admittedly, he was only one season long, but Oberyn Martell, Game of Thrones, he is the bee's knees, which makes me about 60. He's actually an amazing actor, and he just kind of burst onto the scene, and he just owned that character of Oberyn there. And he came in, and he did it, and then by the end, you were rooting for him, even though he was scummy and kind of sleazy, but you were rooting for him to kick the mountain's ass. He doesn't quite do that. I mean, he kind of almost does it, and then I won't spoil everything, but you should definitely watch it. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones by now, you need to at least give it a try. So I was super excited that Pedro Pascal was coming on with it. But as far as, taking off from the movies, I mean, the last movie that came out that was a Star Wars film was Solo. And from my perspective, you can take a look at the review of The Single Dad's Guide to Life. I actually liked Solo pretty much. I mean, it wasn't a perfect movie, but it was fun, and I thought it was a good stepping off point, and the guy they chose to do Solo was really pretty good at it. But it was coming on the heels of The Last Jedi. Now, I'll admit, I kind of like The Last Jedi to start, but it's worn on me, and it hasn't worn well. It's one of those films that you can kind of watch the first time and you go, and then you're like, wait a second, you've just kind of upended the whole entire Star Wars universe. What the heck were you thinking? It didn't have that joy that the original Star Wars movies had, and then it didn't have that kind of childlike innocence of the first three, although I'll admit, I don't admit to number 2 existing, ever. So there was something there, and Boba Fett's there, but other than that, I don't want to talk about it. 3 was actually pretty good, although I still think it was Frankenstein-esque. So with The Last Jedi, I I really should start with The Force Awakens. Now, admittedly, after watching The Force Awakens again and again, you do realize that it's just kind of a retelling of Star Wars Episode 4 with Betty Sue character who can magically do everything. You would say that, well, it took her, like, she was kind of magic and it just happened really quick. With Luke, it didn't really work that way. At the same time, it kind of did. I mean, really, he just jumped into things. And if you wanted to go into the Star Wars mythology, Luke really should have been exhibiting signs of this much longer, and especially with someone as powerful as his dad for so long, he should have been showing signs of some pretty amazing things. Now, obviously, he was a great pilot, and people knew that he was a great pilot, so that was something. But as far as the Force, I mean, he should have been exhibiting signs of the Force, like, somehow. And then he just kind of magically, oh yeah, I got it, and I'm doing it. And then the next thing you know, he goes off to Yoda, and he thinks some things are crazy, and he gets training, and then we're now back with Baby Yoda. So I really don't want to get into all the details of the series. What I do want to do is kind of evaluate what I've seen so far. Now, the first thing is The Mandalorian is like a Western. So it's the outside character who kind of is sucked into something usually through someone, but not necessarily. He sees an injustice and he's going to right that wrong. And in this instance, the injustice is them trying to assassinate Baby Yoda, who's 50 years old. So I'm still wondering why the gaga goo-goo at 50, but I don't know. I guess they're just saying that people age differently. Obviously, the whole Yoda living to 900 thing, that should make him 1/9, so it's 1/20th of his final age, so he'd be, what, 4, I guess? 3, 4? 5, maybe, if you say we live to 100. But even 3-year-olds talk. And he did lift up that weird rhino-looking creature. What is he saying? He's being sucked into this. First, he's having to relate to different people, and then he's kind of even relating to communities, trying to find a place for him, because he knows that he himself doesn't fit in. But he sees the injustice of this, and he's going to keep on taking it on. Now, the thing is Westerns tend to be movies. They don't list in a whole series unless it's kind of episodic and different. This is not really that. So you're trying to kind of take that thematically and spread it out over the time. For right now, I'm really loving it. I'm really loving all the different things that they're doing it. Yes, they fan service every once in a while. They get us to love different things. The last week, to take us back to Mos Eisley, obviously, we're nostalgic for Star Wars, and so we want to go back and we want to see what it's like there. And obviously we know it's crazy and rough and tumble. There are a bunch of people fighting each other, so we're having to deal with that. But they're still keeping with the mythology of the Western and the Western anti-hero who's outside of town, who has to save society from itself. And the question is that who are they going to save and what's going to happen? And I think it's going to be interesting how they draw it out over the seasons. But for right now, it's caught my interest. I think the downside is you can get into the too cutesy episodic nature of it all. And when it turns to that, then I think people may be turned off. I think episode number 4, where he kind of joins that nice peaceful community and he helps them out from these evil the people that have an AT-AT that are in the Endor moon, which once again they're fan servicing. He's gonna leave him there, but then he can't because he realizes they're coming after him no matter where they're at. When it turned into that kind of cheesy thing, it turned into more television and not it lost that little cinematic feel. So the question is how are they going to maintain this over time? For right now, I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars, but I think it's one of those things that's going to be hard to see. You're going to have to kind of watch it week by week, and if you come back, I'll try to go over it week by week, go more over the episode, go more in depth than I have right now. Number 2 is High School the Musical. Oh, High School the Musical, the series. Okay, so I'm a dad, and I have a daughter, and ironically enough, one of the first things that we were watching on the Disney Channel when my daughter was wee, and now she's 13. But we were watching High School the Musical, and so Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens and all of the cast of the original one, My daughter loved that. Now, it's not perfect, and it's not something that I particularly loved, but it was interesting, and it was okay for a musical television show. And Kenny Ortega does get into all sorts of different things, and you gotta appreciate that he loves musicals. I mean, I've loved him from way back when he was doing Newsies when I was younger. And so was Christian Bale, evidently. They have a television series. Now, you have to understand about this television series is it's done in the form of The Office. So what you do is you end up having a bunch of characters, and they end up interacting with each other, and then talking to you, the camera, as if they're filming something like a regular television show, or as if they're filming The Office, and it's like some sort of documentary, and you're having a documentary about how they're putting together the musical. That's what they're doing here, and this does kind of make it funny, and it does adult level the thing a little bit more. The thing is it still turns into kind of teenage mishmash drama, which it's not horrible. After all, I like Glee, at least the first couple of seasons. When it gets into the teen drama-esque element, it's not quite as interesting, but I do think it kind of has a little bit of an interesting, and I can't, your teens are going to like it. I think they're going to appreciate it. They're going to appreciate that kind of interaction with the camera, that breaking of the fourth wall, and interacting with the audience. And I think that's going to work well for them. Number 3, and my second favorite of the Disney Plus shows, is actually the Imagineering Story. Just because I love Disney parks, and I've loved it forever, and I had annual passes forever. So if you're an annual pass holder at any of the Disney parks, or you love Disney so much that you love to go to Disneyland as often as possible, you are going to want to catch the Imagineering Story. Now, admittedly, the first year was pretty much Disneyland. That was it. It was Disney's creation of Disneyland. It was the developing of WED, which is the kind of design studio and where he got his Imagineers, what he ended up calling his Imagineers eventually. Anyway, he took them, and then the design of the park and everything they had to go through, and all the things that you learned about how they had to put together the park, and everything was slipshod and last minute, and how the Mark Twain was sinking on the first day because it was so overpacked. But then things got better, and he kept working, and he kept moving around the edges, and everything kept improving. And he saw, when he got criticized early on, he did something like no one would have thought of, and at the same time was absolutely brilliant. Because to keep up with the times, you have to have things that are changing all the time. So he said that as long as this park is going, it's never going to stop changing. It's never going to be completed. So you're going to have to get used to it. So he ended up kind of foretelling what was going to happen, and Disney's always constantly changing. The Disneyland parks are always constantly changing. They're always constantly growing. They're always constantly finding new things that they can do. And even if they're not new per se, he's actually updating the park itself. So the first part is all about that, and then it moves into all the other different Disney parks. Now, the thing is, you have to understand, it's one thing for me to love it, just because I love kind of the history and everything of it. My parents are in their mid-70s at this point, and they were watching this with me, and all of a sudden my mom and dad, who used to love to travel but kind of want to go nowhere right now, we would love to go back to a Disney park in Florida. I'm like, what the? So, I mean, this story is awesome, and then it goes into Epcot and how it went, and how Disney was supposed to do it one way, and then it ended up another way, and it goes into the Magic Kingdom and everything that goes on in Florida, and then with Disneyland Paris, and then Tokyo Disneyland, and then all the different parks. I mean, there's 3 or 4 new parks that I had never thought of or even thought of going to that now I absolutely want to go to now after watching the Imagineering Story. So if you're into Disneyland at all, you're going to love this. It is totally, you're going to eat it up. That's the thing. I mean, as excited as I am about The Mandalorian every week, I'm as excited about the Imagineering Story. Number 4 is Encore. It's actually put together by Kristen Bell. She's helping with the executive producing and doing a bit of the narration. Anyway, she is kind of the means behind this thing about a bunch of people who did a musical in high school who decided they were going to come back and do the same musical 20, 30, whatever years later. if you like musicals or you like kind of a behind the scenes and you kind of like reality television, this just kind of blends. You know, you love musicals, you love your reality television, you're going to see if they can put together a show in 5 days. Now, the thing is that not only do they get them to come back and try to redo the show in 5 days, but then they bring in professional people to kind of direct them, and music directors, and then they bring people in behind the scenes as well, like they brought in the original Belle from the Broadway cast of Beauty and the Beast to help the people do Beauty and the Beast. So they will bring in people to help them get up to speed, and in 5 days, obviously you know that their singing is going to be absolutely perfect, but it's pretty damn good. So if you kind of enjoy kind of seeing people look like they're going to crash and burn and somehow make it out, and then, you know, just kind of relives this thing that was important to them when they were little. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's the best thing in the world, but my daughter enjoys it, and we all kind of enjoy it. My parents, myself, we all enjoy it as a family. Number 5 on my list of things is The World According to Jeff Goldblum. Now, I've liked Jeff Goldblum for a really long time. I was a fan of his we're talking back The Fly. So, well before Jurassic Park, before he really made a name for himself or anything that he's been doing in Marvel recently. But he's a weird guy. A totally weird dude. And if you're into the weirdness, then The World According to Jeff Goldblum is absolutely for you. The thing is that from my perspective, his weirdness wears a little old as you get into actually doing this television series. It's quirky, but it's quirky without it being humorous or having a point. I think the thing about Jeff Goldblum, what makes him brilliant, at least in film, is that his kind of insanity has funny context. So it's like having a straight man and a funny man, and he's the funny man, only we're supposed to be the straight man. The thing that makes comedy funny is we watch both the funny man and the straight man and how the straight man interacts. Now, we're supposed to be the straight man, and all I can do is go, I just don't really see it. And he did this whole thing about shoes, and if you're really into shoes, I suppose it's really interesting to you, and it's things that strike him as interesting. So, I can't say that it's like awful, but it's not my cup of tea. So for me, I give it a thumbs down. Number 6, and the last thing I'm going to cover here today on Disney Plus, is Forky Asks a Question. Which Forky is Forky, the guy who's been around for 2 days. And so he's going to have an awful lot of questions for everyone around. Of course, you wonder where Woody was, because I don't recall him being just 2 days old when they left Woody at the carnival. But everyone else is around, and it seems that they actually got most of the cast of people to do the voices. And so Forky asks some interesting questions about life. What is art? What is love? What is all kinds of things? And so he kind of does that. And so he kind of does his shtick, and it's kind of funny and ridiculous. And he's got those really creepy eyes going on that are dangling all over the place. But after he dangles his eyes and does all that, all of a sudden he has one tidbit of brilliance. And then everybody's like, for that one moment, you're like, Forky, how magical. And then he becomes Forky again, which is kind of funny. It's great for the kids. They're going to like it. And there really is kind of something brilliant in that creative madness that he has. I really kind of appreciate it. It's kind of wild and dingy, but I actually like it, and I think it works. And, if you have a little kid, or even not a little kid, maybe a little bit older, you can watch it together and enjoy it. And that's what makes Disney so wonderful. Disney's been a part of my life for forever, it seems like. My very first Disney film was Snow White, which seems weird because why would somehow magically that be my first Disney film, because it was the first Disney one I ever did. And I didn't come around when it first came out. I'm not that old. Either that or I'm really well preserved. The thing is that, and my first reaction to that movie was the lady fell down on the rock, which, come on, she fell down on the rock. You know, I loved Disney for forever, and then the first time my parents got cable when I was 10 years old, they didn't get cable until the Disney Channel came out in 1983. So then Disney was my thing, and I watched all the Disney movies and everything else like that. And I've been super excited to share this with my daughter, and it's out now, which is great. Come back weekly. I will. I may not be going into the Jeff Goldblum series every week, but I will be going into Disney Plus and everything that's going on here at. On Disney Plus, and I'll review it all here at the Single Dad's Guide to Life. As far as us doing other things, we're going to be doing lots of other things here at the Single Dad's Guide to Life. Stay tuned for the Single Dad's Guide to Fake News and some other things that I will be doing as often as possible. I think getting into the vlog and getting into other things is going to be an exciting adventure. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think you will enjoy it when it's all said and done. So welcome again to the Single Dad's Guide to Life's weekly vlog, the Dad's Disney Plus Extra. Hope to see you again next week.